Alright, so this chapter, nutrition chapter, is actually very short, not a lot of information. Okay, so nutrients is what we need to for the structural materials of our body, but also for energy. Two major classes of nutrients, macronutrients. Oh, and also know for these the types of macronutrients, and this is the same thing as organic molecules, carbohydrates, lipids, proteins. Also, we are able to get nucleic acids from the food that we eat. Well, I'm just going to add that in there actually. Nucleic acids, or the building blocks for them anyway. Micronutrients, like vitamins and minerals. Essential nutrients, know that these are nutrients that the body cannot make on its own. And so we have to get these nutrients from our diet. Okay, so first, carbohydrates. If you remember, complex carbohydrates are called polysaccharides, meaning made up of many, many glucose molecules. Now you will see, especially glycogen, but really both starch and glycogen are made up of many glucose molecules. And so we actually learned that in AMP1. Simple carbohydrates, meaning smaller carbohydrates. Disaccharide just means two sugar molecules attached to each other. Monosaccharide means one sugar molecule. Oh, and we had learned about the examples of monosaccharides. Glucose is an example, fructose is another example. So just one single sugar molecules. And so digestion breaks the carbohydrates into monosaccharides. Cellulose. Cellulose is the tough part of the plant material. We are not able to digest it, but it does provide fiber for us. Okay, so over here it just gives kind of a summary of carbohydrates. Starch, sucrose, maltose, lactose are the larger molecules. And so then the smaller monosaccharides, glucose. So it's just saying how sucrose is actually made up of glucose and fructose. Maltose is made up of glucoses, or just two glucoses. And what it shows here is that monosaccharides are giving us energy when they're broken down. Okay, so it just says when they're broken down, they release CO2, H2O, and also energy by our cells. If you have too much glucose in your diet, it can turn into glycogen. It can be converted into glycogen. And so this process is known as glycogenesis. So genesis, think the formation, the creation. Glycogenesis, it just means forming more glycogen. So then this extra glucose, this glycogen, is stored in our liver and muscle cells. Now, if you have too much glycogen, especially in the liver, and then in our adipose tissues, this too much glycogen gets converted to fat. So when glycogen gets converted into fat, then you say lipogenesis because you're now creating lipids. And so those two terms may come up on the exam. Glycogenesis, know that it means forming glycogen, and then lipogenesis, forming lipids. Okay, so now next lipids. Lipids, fats, oils, fat-like, steroids, cholesterol. We're going to learn. Lipids also give us energy. They actually give us a lot more energy than carbohydrates, and also important for structural components, such as our cell membrane. The most common lipids that we consume are triglycerides. Triglycerides are made up of glycerol and fatty acids. Sorry about that. Saturated fats. This should also be reviewed from AMP1. Saturated fats are of animal origin, so meat, eggs, milk, lard. Saturated fats, we learned last semester, they have no double bonds between the carbons. Okay, but so this could come up on this exam. And too much saturated fats can lead to cardiovascular disease, heart disease, stroke, like that. Unsaturated fats instead, these are the more plant oils. Unsaturated fats, know that these contain the double bonds. Cholesterol. cholesterol, yeah, abundant in the liver. I put up this video about cholesterol, and it shows how the liver likes to store too much extra of it and then turns it into bile. Okay, so the functions of lipids. So the main thing is that fats give us energy. They actually give us more than twice as much energy as carbohydrates or proteins. Triglycerides, when we're going to use them for energy, our cells break them down into glycerol and fatty acids. So then the glycerol fatty acids later can be used to store fat if there's too much. Also, too much glucose, too much amino acids can also be converted into the fat molecules, so lipogenesis. Liver has this very important function. It can actually convert fatty acids from one form to another. But there are some fatty acids. These are called the essential fatty acids. So linoleic acid is an example. Our body cannot make that by itself. Our liver cannot make it. So we do have to consume that. Okay, so then the next thing, these lipoproteins. So VLDLs, LDLs, and HDLs. The video that I have linked right below this does a really great job of explaining it. But here I'll show you the things that I want you to know. VLDLs, these have a very high triglyceride content. LDLs are high in cholesterol. And then the HDLs, these instead have a high protein content. The liver controls the cholesterol that is inside these lipoproteins. Cholesterol, it can be produced by the liver or it can be consumed through the food that we eat, so that it's released into the blood. So that excess cholesterol is taken away by the HDLs. HDLs bring that extra cholesterol back to the liver. So then the liver can use that cholesterol to make bile. So then that bile will then go to the digestive system, if you remember, through the bile duct to break down the fats that we eat. Okay, so triglycerides here, it's saying they're made up of fatty acids and glycerol. And so when we digest triglycerides in our digestive system, you get fatty acids, glycerol. And then these molecules can be used to make triglycerides, lipoproteins, fatty acids, but saying except for the essential ones, cholesterol and phospholipids. Okay, so then next, proteins. Proteins, I hope you remember, they're made up of amino acids. Proteins, many functions. So they can act as enzymes. Some are enzymes, some are hormones, antibodies, clotting factors. There's so many functions. Proteins can also give us energy. They have to be first broken down into amino acids. So then what happens is the nitrogen part of it, or the nitrogen group, it's removed. This nitrogen part is going to turn into urea. Urea is a waste product. Urea gets removed by our kidneys. But then the other parts of the amino acid can then go into those steps in cellular respiration to make ATP, so such as the citric acid cycle. So here's just a summary again. Dietary proteins are first broken down into amino acids in our digestive system. So then the nitrogen part, just to make sure that you guys got it, nitrogen part turns into urea, but the rest of the amino acid will go into those steps to give us energy. And so here they labeled here the citric acid cycle, where the amino acid parts can go into, and we can get ATP from the breakdown of amino acids. So yeah, after proteins are digested into amino acids, either the amino acids can be used to produce energy, or you can use the amino acids to make different proteins, or if it's too much in the body, too much of anything can get converted to fat, or it's saying into glucose as well. protein sources, foods that contain these proteins, animal products, some plants here, beans, peas. Plant products contain less protein though. The body needs 20 types of amino acids. Now the thing is, our bodies can make 12 of these amino acids by combining different molecules, but 8 we cannot make on our own. Those are the essential amino acids. We have to get these amino acids from the foods that we eat. They have all 20 amino acids need to be in our body in order to make the correct proteins. If you're missing even one, that is not good for your body. It's not going to function correctly. And so that's what this next line is saying. Okay, so here's just an example. It's just showing here incomplete proteins. So versus the complete proteins. So here are just some examples. Lysine is an essential amino acid. Methionine is another essential one, and tryptophan is another essential one. So it's saying that if you eat, let's say you're a vegetarian, if you only eat legumes, cereal grains, and these are not going to have as much lysine. Versus in these other foods, these are missing methionine. And then the last column here showing the foods that are missing tryptophan. So it's much better to combine these. Make sure that you're getting the legumes, all the different types of legumes, because if you notice here, peanuts are good. Sure, they have proteins, but they don't have enough lysine, and so you need to put these other plant products into your diets. And so yeah, it's just something interesting. You don't need to memorize this table or anything, but I just wanted to show you. Nitrogen balance is if you have enough proteins in your body. So if you have enough, that means that you're in an equilibrium. You have a nitrogen balance. And so here I'll just say, if you have enough. Negative nitrogen balance, well, that's from starvation, not enough. Positive nitrogen balance, yes, this can be seen in growing children, pregnant women, athletes, but this is not really that good for the rest of us who are not, training for a marathon, or we're not children. So too much of any molecule is not good. So too much of proteins can get converted to fat, and then it can lead to plaque buildup in our arteries. And then this is just a summary showing the major nutrients. So carbohydrates, we learned, those are important for energy. Lipids provide us actually twice as much energy. Lipids can get broken down into fatty acids and glycerols. And then proteins, made up of amino acids, they can also give us energy, but also important for other cell functions.